The girl drew a picture of her mother and gave it to the saddler. He framed it and wept. The picture was drawn in pencil on the back of a feed store receipt. It was a face, a woman's face, with eyes that were slightly too large and a mouth that was slightly too small, and hair that was more suggestion than rendering, the lines uncertain and earnest, in the way that a 7-year-old's lines are uncertain and earnest, which is to say, they were honest in a way that trained artists cannot reproduce, because training teaches precision, and precision is the enemy of honesty, and honesty was the thing the picture had in abundance. The girl's name was Luellen. She was 7 years old, and she was the daughter of Thea Colquitt, who was a widow, who had been a widow for 11 months, whose widowhood had begun on a January afternoon when her husband Marcus fell from a barn roof during an ice storm and did not get up. And the not getting up was the ending, and the ending had rearranged everything. The finances, the household, the future, the daily architecture of a life that had been built for 2 adults and 1 child, and that now contained 1 adult and 1 child, and the absence where the other adult had been. And the absence was the largest room in the house, larger than the kitchen or the bedroom or the parlor. The absence taking up more space than a living person, because a living person occupies a body, and an absence occupies everything. Thea and Luwellyn lived in Hadley, Nebraska, in a rented house on the east end of town, the renting a step down from the farm they had owned when Marcus was alive. The farm sold to pay the debts that Marcus had accumulated, in the way that farmers accumulate debts, slowly, seasonally, the debts growing like crops, except that crops can be harvested and debts cannot. Debts can only be paid or defaulted on, and Thea had paid because paying was the honorable thing, and honor was the quality Thea valued above comfort. And the valuing had cost her the farm, and left her in a rented house with 11 months of widowhood and a daughter who drew pictures on the backs of receipts. The saddler's name was Garrett Olmsted. He was 45 years old. He had a shop on Main Street, where he made saddles and repaired harnesses, and stitched leather into the shapes that horses and riders required. And the stitching was the work, and the work was the life, and the life was quiet, and the quiet was the problem. Though Garrett did not call it a problem, Garrett called it a condition, the way a man with a limp calls the limp a condition, something he has adapted to, something that no longer requires conscious accommodation, because the accommodation has become automatic. He had been married once. His wife, Pauline, had died of consumption 8 years earlier, and the dying had been slow, 6 months of coughing and thinning, and the particular transparency that consumption produces, the transparency of a person becoming less solid, less present, less here, until the here-ness is gone entirely, and what remains is the memory. And the memory was what Garrett carried. The memory stored in a locket he wore around his neck, the locket containing a photograph of Pauline taken on their wedding day, the photograph small and brown and fading the way photographs fade, and the way memories fade, slowly, the edges going first, then the middle, until what remains is not the image, but the feeling the image produced. And the feeling was love, and love does not fade the way photographs fade. Love persists in a different medium, the medium of the body, stored in the hands and the chest and the throat. And Garrett felt it there, the love for a woman who had been dead for 8 years and who was alive in his locket and his chest and his throat. His days were the same. Every day was the same in the way that stitches are the same, one after another, evenly spaced, functional, holding something together without beauty or variation. He opened the shop at 7. He lit the stove. He set the coffee on. He worked. The work was the hours, and the hours were the work. And between the work and the hours there was nothing. No conversation except with customers. No meals shared except with himself. No voice in the house at the end of the day except the silence. And silence is not a voice, but it speaks. And what it says is you are alone. And the saying is relentless because silence does not pause or rest or go to sleep. Silence is always speaking, and the speaking is always the same word. Luellen came into the shop on a Saturday morning in November. She came because her mother needed a strap repaired, a harness strap for the horse that pulled their buggy, the horse the only animal they had kept from the farm, the keeping a practical decision, because transportation is a necessity, and necessities are the last things you sell. Luellen carried the strap in both hands, the strap heavy and the hands small, the smallness of the hands emphasizing the heaviness of the strap, in the way that smallness always emphasizes heaviness. A child carrying something too big for her, and the too big was the metaphor, though neither Luellen nor Garrett knew it was a metaphor, the metaphor being, this child is carrying more than she should. Luellen looked around the shop while Garrett examined the strap. She looked at the saddles hanging from ceiling hooks, at the scraps of leather on the workbench, at the tools arranged along the wall in order of size, the awls and the needles and the punches and the knives, each tool in its place, each place marked by use. The marks the evidence of years of the same hands reaching for the same tools in the same order. And the sameness was visible to Luellen the way weather is visible. You cannot touch it, but you can see it and feel it. And what Luellen felt was the aloneness of a room where one person works and no one visits except to drop off broken things and pick up fixed things, and the dropping off and picking up was the only human contact the room contained. "My mother needs this fixed," Luellen said. She set the strap on the counter. She looked at Garrett with the directness that children possess and adults lose, the directness that is the unfiltered assessment of the world, and Luellen's assessment of Garrett was visible in her face. She was looking at a large man in a leather apron, with thick hands and sad eyes, and the sad eyes were the thing she noticed, because children notice sadness the way dogs notice fear, instinctively, without analysis. "I can fix this," Garrett said. "Tell your mother it will be ready Monday." "Are you sad?" Luellen said. The question was a door. The door opened into a room that Garrett kept locked, the room where the sadness lived, the sadness that was the residue of Pauline's dying and the 8 years of afterward, the afterward that was the stitching, and the leather, and the quiet, and the locket, and the feeling in his chest and his throat. The question opened the door, and the opening was the child's doing, the child who did not know that the door existed, and who therefore did not know that opening it was remarkable, and the remarkable was the innocence that walks through locked doors, because it does not know they are locked. "I am fine," Garrett said, which was the lie that adults tell children. The lie that is not malicious, but protective. The protection of the child from the adult's weather, the weather being the sadness, and the sadness being the room, and the room being locked. Except it was no longer locked, because a 7-year-old had opened it with a question. Luellen came back on Monday. She came with coins for the repair, and a piece of paper. The piece of paper was the picture drawn in pencil on the back of a feed store receipt, the picture of a woman's face, with eyes that were too large, and a mouth that was too small, and hair that was suggestion, rather than rendering. "This is my mother," Luellen said. "I drew it for you because you are sad, and my mother says that looking at the face of someone who cares about you makes the sadness smaller. And my mother cares about you because you fixed our strap, and the fixing was kind, and kindness is caring, and caring is what my mother says makes the world work." Garrett took the picture. He took it with the hands that stitched leather, the hands that were thick and calloused and precise, the precision of a craftsman who works in fractions of inches, and the taking was careful, because the picture was on a receipt, and receipts are fragile, and fragile things require careful handling. And Garrett handled it carefully, the way he handled everything that mattered. He looked at the face. The face was Thea Colquitt's face as rendered by a 7-year-old, inaccurate in specifics and perfect in feeling, the feeling being warmth, the warmth of a mother drawn by a daughter who loves her, and the love was in the lines, the uncertain, earnest lines that captured not what Thea looked like, but what Thea felt like, and what Thea felt like was kindness. And kindness was the thing Garrett had not felt directed at him in 8 years. He wept. The weeping was involuntary, the way the saddler's hands moved involuntarily when they stitched, the body doing a thing it knows how to do without the mind's permission. And weeping was a thing Garrett's body knew how to do, but had not done in years, because the not doing was the suppression, and the suppression was the control, and the control was the wall he had built around the room where the sadness lived. And the wall was breached now. Breached by a picture on a receipt, and the breaching was the release, and the release was the weeping. and the weeping was 2 tears that ran down the creased face of a 45-year-old saddler, standing in his shop on a Monday morning in November, looking at a picture drawn by a child. Luellen did not look alarmed. Children who have lost a father understand tears. They understand that tears are not weakness but weather. The weather that passes through a person, the way rain passes through a sky, necessary and natural and temporary. And the temporary was the comfort, because temporary means it will stop, and stopping means the person will be all right, and being all right was the thing Luellen wanted for the sad man in the leather apron. "My mother said you can keep it," Luellen said. Garrett framed the picture. He framed it himself, in his shop, with a piece of walnut and a pane of glass from a broken lantern. The framing an act of craftsmanship applied to a child's drawing. The craftsmanship disproportionate to the object in the way that love is disproportionate to its occasions. You do not frame a receipt because the receipt deserves framing. You frame it because the thing on the receipt deserves honoring, and the thing on the receipt was a face drawn in love, and love deserves framing, and the framing was the honoring. He hung it on the wall of his shop, next to the window where the morning light came in, the light falling on the picture the way light falls on things that matter. Directly, warmly, without reservation, the light not knowing that the picture was a child's drawing on a receipt, and not a portrait in oils. The light treating it the same, because light does not discriminate. Light illuminates everything equally, and the equal illumination was the democracy of beauty, and the picture was beautiful. Thea came to the shop the next week. She came because Luellen had told her about the framing. He put it on his wall, Mama, in a real frame, and the telling had prompted the coming, and the coming was the curiosity of a woman who wanted to see what a saddler had done with her daughter's drawing. She saw the picture. She saw it on the wall, in the walnut frame, in the morning light, and the seeing was the recognition. The recognition that a man who frames a child's drawing on a receipt is a man who understands value, and value is not price. Value is the importance assigned to things by hearts rather than markets. And Garrett's heart had assigned importance to a 7-year-old's picture of her mother, and the assigning was the tenderness, and the tenderness was the thing Thea saw when she looked at the framed picture. "She draws pictures of everyone," Thea said. "She draws the postmaster, and the school teacher, and the woman at the mercantile. She has never drawn me for someone else before. The drawing for is new. The newness is you. She drew me for you because she decided that you needed me. And a 7-year-old's decisions about who needs whom are more accurate than an adult's, because a 7-year-old decides with the heart, and an adult decides with the head, and the heart is the better instrument." "She asked me if I was sad," Garrett said. "No one has asked me that in 8 years. The asking was the kindness. The picture was the kindness made visible." Thea looked at Garrett. She looked at him the way she had been looked at by the picture, directly, with the assessment that is not judgment but recognition, the recognition of a person who carries the same weight you carry, the weight of loss, and the afterward of loss, and the daily accommodation of living in a house where the largest room is the absence. "Luellen sees things," Thea said. "She sees the things that adults train themselves not to see, the sadness, the loneliness, the need. She sees them and she responds to them because she has not yet learned that responding to sadness is inconvenient, and inconvenience is the reason adults stop responding, and the stopping is the cruelty, the small daily cruelty of pretending that the sad man in the leather shop is fine, when the sad man is not fine, and the not fine is visible to anyone who looks." "I am better than I was," Garrett said. "The picture helped, the framing helped, the hanging helped, the looking at it every morning helped. The help is cumulative. Each small thing adds to the previous small thing, and the addition is the healing, and the healing began with a receipt." Thea smiled. The smile was the permission to continue. The continuing that was the relationship that had begun with a harness strap and a question and a picture, and that was becoming something else, something larger. The larger thing being the thing that happens when 2 people who have been carrying absence discover that the absence can be shared, and sharing it makes it lighter, and lighter is the direction of healing. Garrett walked Thea home that evening. He walked with her through Hadley, Nebraska, past the feed store and the post office and the church, and the walking was the beginning of the walks that became daily, and the daily walks became the courtship. And the courtship was a man and a woman and a 7-year-old who had seen what the adults could not see, which was that they belonged together, and the belonging had started with a picture on a receipt, a picture of a mother's face drawn in pencil by a child, who understood that sadness is a thing you can fix if you are willing to draw a picture and give it away. That night, Garrett sat in his shop after closing, the lamp lit, the picture on the wall catching the lamplight the way it caught the morning light, and he opened the locket around his neck and looked at Pauline's photograph, the small brown fading photograph of a woman on her wedding day, and he held the locket in one hand and looked at the picture on the wall with the other eye. The two faces side by side in his vision, the wife who was gone and the woman who was arriving, and the gone and the arriving were not competing but coexisting, the way memory and hope coexist, the way winter and spring coexist in March, and the coexisting was the permission that Pauline would have given if Pauline could give permissions. The permission to continue living, which is the permission the dead always grant, because the dead want the living to live. And living was what Garrett was beginning to do again, 8 years later, because a child had drawn a picture, and the picture had opened a door, and the door had let the light in.